cooking settings for 26 years. My first job as a line cook was Ann Arbor, Michigan. I don't know if any of you saw the football national championship recently. Michigan, my home team, won the national championship, so I'm going to brag on that for a second. But I also grew up working at a pizza place called Cottage Inn. It's in the shadow of Michigan Stadium. There we go. So I'd like to talk about this first because it's just a fun example. When there's a football game at University of Michigan, which is Ann Arbor, it's like a Boulder-sized town in Michigan. 110,000 people go to the stadium. What do you think they want to do after they watch a football game? What's their next thought?
Food or
Eat
bar.
and drink, right? Eat and drink. They've probably already been drinking at the stadium, so they probably really need to eat. So I worked at a place called Cottage Inn Pizza, deep dish pizza. It's similar to like the Detroit style pizza that you see all over the place now. It's from Michigan style. And we'd cook 50 sheet pans, which is about, how big is a sheet pan? You'll learn in class.
Big.
But big, so basically 50 sheet pans, 50 pieces each, 48 pieces each. So basically you pre-prep 2,500 portions of pizza. And then we sold every piece for $7. So we sold it with like a little spatula out the window, like out the door. And that's just like, and that was everybody on deck. That's 10 people working as fast as you can. But we also made tremendous amounts of money through that. That subsidized the fact that maybe some nights at dinner we would only serve 50 people or 100 people. Like, you gotta have some kind of revenue mainstream that's gonna keep you up and keep you going. The industry is fickle, but back to multitasking. I have seen people multitask incredibly well. I had a sous chef. I worked in London, England for 2 years, and I had a sous chef named Arnaud from France. He was classically trained. Like, he quit school when he was 14 to become a chef, and that was it, right? So, in France, there's an apprenticeship program where you don't have to go to high school. If you want to be a chef, you find your way, you find a mentor, and you do an apprenticeship, and that's what he did. So for 5 years, he worked for no pay, basically no pay, but learned the craft. That guy, so like, his station looked like this. He had something called a French top in front of him. So French top is like, imagine a large cast iron. Have you ever seen like a cast iron grill top? Like in a restaurant where they cook like eggs and bacon and hash browns and stuff? So it's like that, but it has concentric rings in the center that you can take out or put back. So you can either create high BTU like wok burning style, or you can create like an even distributed heat. So he would run this station, he'd be cooking maybe 10 different things on all different elements of heat, while behind him is cooking his stocks, bubbling away vegetable stock, beef stock, chicken stock. That's how you multitask in the kitchen. It's all timing. It's just timing. You have a little timer in your head, and you know how long everything takes. So stay with me. So I was at Lambeau Field last weekend. Green Bay Packers, anybody fans? No Packers fan? All right, anyway, you guys know of the Green Bay Packers. Are you familiar with the football team? Okay. So they have a very historic stadium called Lambeau Field, and it's really cool. I'm not even a football fan, but I was super impressed. And I got this backstage visit with the chefs because I knew somebody who knew the dude, and they had a French top too, which was totally wild because a French top is usually for like high-end fine dining, and they're cranking out up to 10,000 meals a day for people in like a pretty, high-end-ish environment, some to go, some to sit. And he said in the last 3 months during the season, they've done 28,000 orders of fried cheese curds. 28,000. So anyway, my point is, I was at Lambeau, and it reminded me a lot of this restaurant I used to work at, because they had this long line. That's why they call it a line cook. Okay, so there's a long line. Most people in a line cook setting, you just have your station, and you're just responsible for what's around you. So you're really just doing a lot of switching, turning, flipping. You generally don't leave. If you need something, you shout to somebody else to bring it to you, because you pretty much have to stay where you are. But that's because in your head is the timing. And so they had this really cool technology that I think you'd be interested in too, which is called Aloha. So it's a point of sale system where, let's say you all are at a table. There's a table of 4 that comes and sits. And you order appetizers, salads, entrees, and desserts. This thing has it down, the computer system, to where it has an exact time placed on each one of the items. So like fried cheese curds takes 3 minutes and 4 seconds or whatever to like plate. And everyone's trained to do it in the exact same amount of time. So unlike the old traditional system where you have a ticket and it's got everybody's stuff on one ticket, each person at their station just has to think about and focus on what they see in front of them. So the appetizers, it starts with the apps. This person here, you know that you gotta get that thing up in 3 minutes. It has to be, it's just gotta be perfect timing. But he or she doesn't have to think and worry about timing with everybody else because the system kind of times it out. So the line was completely silent. Nobody's even talking to each other. Everybody's just keeping their head down, just doing their exact thing. So, I don't know, technology has advanced in one way in the food service industry, but in other ways it has not. Like most restaurants are still doing a traditional ticket system. Some chef is yelling it out. I need the steak in, 12 minutes. 3 French fries in 4 minutes. Basically, it's like a timing thing. You have someone called an expediter, who is sort of the conduit between the cooks in the kitchen and the serving staff that's out. It all flows through the person who works the pass, or the expediting station. All right, so do I believe it's possible to multitask? I do, and I've seen it in a kitchen. And if you're someone that likes to have a lot of pots on the stove, balls in the air, whatever you want to call it, it could be a profession for you. It could be something that you would find some interest with. Will you be able to do a bunch of things at the beginning before you have much experience? No. But Chef will teach you. He's got some tricks up his sleeve. I mean, he's not as young as he used to be, but he knows a lot. So, all right, I'm going to pause. Questions? Questions so far? Am I going too fast? Are you following me? Yes.
This is Fairview.
It's Monday morning. You guys are sharp. All right, well, I'm going to ask my Fairview question then, because last time I came and talked to a class, I got surprised right at the end by something, so I have to ask this time. How many of you have ever been skiing in Europe? Raise your hand. Oh, man. But just one? Okay, good. How many of you have ever worked in a restaurant? How many of you work in a restaurant job? Yeah. You do? Perfect. Tell me about it. What do you do?
I work at like a bakery, so it's not exactly like a restaurant, but
What is it? What is it called?
Peace, Love, and Chocolate.
Oh,
Where is it on Pro?
It's like on the west end, like at the very end.
Okay, tell me, if you're comfortable sharing, tell me about your job. What does it feel like? What do you do? What hours do you work?
I work, it's kind of all over the place, but I like decorate cakes and stuff.
Cool,
So
so
I
more that
make-
like aesthetic, kind of like make it look super nice for the client. Cool, do you enjoy that?
Yeah, it's really,
Is there an artistic element to that you appreciate, that you like?
yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and who did you learn from? Who did you learn how to do it from?
My boss, Angelica,
Yeah, she's like master.
yeah,
Got it, yeah. And she's good at teaching?
yeah,
See, that's a great environment. To work, if you can find an environment in a restaurant where you're learning a new skill, you have an experienced person teaching you, and they know how to really show you and have time to show you, that's a great, because you can take that skill anywhere, right? Anywhere in the world. If you say I can decorate cakes, you got some of those skills, you can get a job anywhere. Yeah. Someone else? Restaurant work? Yeah.
Oh, I just work in the elder home, so I give people the food and then take it away and stuff like that.
Okay, so you serve them like off a buffet line or a hotline or something?
No, we just go back in the kitchen. It's like have like a restaurant and we bring out to their table and stuff.
Okay, so there's like a pass, like a shiny metal pass, and then you pull the stuff from under the heat lamp
Yeah.
and bring it out to the customer?
Yes.
So you're bringing it right to the table and setting it?
Yes.
Nice. How's that job?
I love it.
Good? What do you like about it?
I like the old ladies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're full of stories of it.
they are.
Cool. So we have
Are you at Fraser?
Yeah.
Fraser Meadows?
They're a great place for high schoolers to get jobs, by the way. And most people really like it.
All right, anyone else work in a restaurant currently or have in the past?
I work at Mad Greens.
Mad
We
Greens?
did food prep from 7 to 10 every morning. It was crazy.
Okay, like prepping, it's a salad place, right? Like
Yeah.
make salads and,
Yeah. We made like our own smoothies and juices and all the chicken, all the bacon, everything was just fresh.
so
really
it was a
hard.
busy job, right?
Yeah,
Did you ever
it's
feel
really-
like you were multitasking and
Oh,
doing
yeah,
3 different things at
absolutely.
once?
Yeah, everyone's running around all the time.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, when I knew what I was doing in the beginning, it was really nerve-wracking.
It's hard, there's a lot of pressure, and it's very time sensitive, right?
Mhm.
I appreciate what you brought up, and then I'll move on to the next thing. So, teamwork. Teamwork is so important in a restaurant setting. How do you feel? Do you feel like you have a good team of people that you work with at your job? Like you can rely on them, they're friendly, they're helpful?
yeah, most of the time.
Most of the time, most of the people. Okay, good, we'll leave it at that. What about you in your setting in Mad Greens? Was there a good
Oh,
teamwork
yeah.
feel? Everyone working together?
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
Good.
everyone's wonderful.
Yeah. So this is another one of the beauties I just want to highlight about the restaurant world. Everyone, if you find the right place and you have the right team and you're just clicking, you may not be getting the best pay in the world, but you're going to be eating really good food. You're going to be in a company of wonderful, interesting people that you enjoy, and there's a life to be had there. The challenge I'm having at my point in my career, to be honest, is making a lot of money in this industry. The money, I don't know. How would you characterize it?
I'll take that one. Money sucks. It's really hard to put pay a mortgage,
Yeah.
pay car insurance, pay car payments, and make it.
And not work too much.
Yeah, otherwise you'll need 2 jobs and you'll work 14
Right, so I
hours.
have a lot of sous chef friends. So sous chef, I'll talk a little bit about the structure of a typical kitchen. And by this I mean like more of a fine dining type setting. So sous, does anyone study French? What does sous mean? Anybody? Under, so under chef. So it just means that they're reporting up to somebody, typically the chef de cuisine or executive chef who's above them. Many kitchens have multiple sous chefs, so you might have a sous chef for daytime, a sous chef for nighttime, different things. But my friends who work in this, even if they've been doing this 20 years, most of them make around $75,000 a year. Which, you know, it's not a little, but if you're working 55 to 65-hour weeks, which is generally expectation, including weekends and holidays and Christmas and Easter, it's hard to say that this sacrifice is necessarily worth it unless you really love the job and what you're doing and the people you're doing it with, right? So is it possible to get rich in the food industry? Yes, but is it? It's very challenging, right? Among my friendship group that I've seen kind of grow up in this world. All right, and now I'm gonna probably like trip you guys on all the different jobs I'm doing right now. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the work that I'm up to. Up until a year-ish ago, I was the food service director for the school district, believe it or not. So I was managing all 56 schools, including Fairview, 200 employees. It was an insane job, trying to feed kids every day, and appeal to the parents of Boulder who are not always gentlest with their criticism. So I left that job in March. I started my own company, but I have 2 kids. I have a mortgage in Boulder. It's expensive to live here, as you know. So I picked up a bevy of part-time jobs. So I just want to kind of tell you a little bit about what I do currently. And I never would have guessed that I'd be doing these jobs, but I'm currently the chef at a frat house. That's where I'm going right after here. On Fraternity Row. It's called Phi Delta Theta. Phi Delta Theta. And I kind of lucked out with this because it turns out this is the frat that has like a high GPA, and it's a sober frat, meaning you can't bring drugs and alcohol in the house. So it's generally in a lot better condition and repair than some of the other frat houses you might be familiar with. They still play like Pong or whatever, they still do the same stuff that fraternity people do, but they go elsewhere if they would like to indulge in drugs and alcohol. So that's kind of cool. It's 40 guys, they all live there. It's around the corner of college, 1111 college. Big cool building. I have a really nice kitchen, work by myself. Just me all day, just do everything. Set the menu, do the ordering, do the dishes, mop the floor, everything. So that's my kind of main steady gig. I get health insurance through this. I make steady money, I might say. I'm also a registered dietitian, which is what I wanted to talk about. Does anyone know what a registered dietitian is? Or have you ever met one or talked to one? Anybody? RD, sometimes called RD. You typically run into us in a hospital setting? No? If you have, let me put it this way, if the adolescent age range, typically you would see an RD if you had disordered eating, anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, some significant eating disorders. If you were significantly overweight or underweight, you might see a RD in a clinical setting. So that's like among this age bracket. As you get older, you've seen it for other reasons.
Can I ask a question? Is that a viable career choice?
Totally, oh, totally.
What does an RD make in a hospital?
So in Colorado, I'd say starting in a hospital is maybe $55K, like starting, but you could come out of college making that. Whoops. You could come out of college making 55, but this is this does require a 4-year nutrition degree, and then a 1-year unpaid internship, in which you cycle through all types of different settings of feeding people at different phases of the life cycle. So the elder care that you mentioned, senior living. So to do the dietetic internship, you have to do a year unpaid, quite a sacrifice, but you spend 3 to 4 weeks in an old person's senior living center. You spend 3 or 4 weeks on a NICU or an ICU unit, like working with young babies and pregnant mothers and people going through those changes of life. You work in a school setting like BVSD or school nutrition. You might go college and university. You basically have to put a touch point on all these different areas. I realized during my internship that I wasn't really cut out for hardcore clinical work. Because when you're in the clinical setting as a dietitian, you can get a job where you're working with like ICU level patients that are like live or die type of stuff, and you're in the same setting as ER doctors and nurses, and it's a very intense environment. I spent 3 weeks in that environment. I watched a lot of things happen in the hospital, and I was like, I don't think I'm quite cut out for that. That's not quite my thing. But interestingly, I'm glad I got this credential because I'm now actually working as a dietitian at a place down called Centennial Peaks. Does anyone know Centennial Peaks? It's down by Vista Hospital, Monarch. No. Centennial Peaks is an inpatient psychiatric hospital. So we have students from a range of actually 13 and up, so quite a lot of adolescents. There's an adolescent unit, there's 4 adult units, and some very, very acute psychiatric conditions. And so what I'm doing is working one-on-one with patients who want advisement on food, and working on how food can improve or engage with your mental health, how it can help recovery, physical recovery. So it's a super interesting job, but again, super intense. Like, I've been doing it for 3 months and I'm burned out. Like, you think you gotta realize sometimes you have to do a job to feel if you really wanna do the job. Does that make sense? There's no other substitute for experience, I think, in some ways. So anyway, these are my 2 jobs. Totally different. This one's very chill. No stress, like almost no stress. The clientele is very not discriminating as long as I make enough food. Here, I'm getting like emotionally involved with people's lives through eating and through diet, but like the conversations get quite intense. So at this point, I wished I had a degree in counseling or therapy or something else. Because a lot of times there is a strong connection between food, behavior, diet, and mental health. So, all right, I got a little heavy for a minute. Okay, I'm gonna lighten it up a little bit. Can you throw the?
Any questions on
Yeah.
these 2 jobs?
There's not a lot of people that do both chef and dietitian.
What are you starting your own business? You mentioned?
I'm figuring it out. It's 7 months old. It's called Molto Core, and I'm trying to do a lot of training and education. I'm training lunch staff at different school districts. I'm doing a little bit of restaurant menu work, like menu analysis. So a lot of restaurants now want to have the nutrition information up on the screen, you know, the carbs, the calories. So I'm doing a little bit of that kind of work, but I'm still kind of figuring it out. Thanks for asking. Okay. Where was I going next? Oh, next picture. I only have 2 images today. One is the octopus on Instagram, and the other is my grandfather. So that's 2. So really wild is I just got this picture from my dad like a couple days ago. This is my grandfather, Chuck Charles. He was a butcher in South Bend, Indiana. I only knew him for like a few years. He died when I was 4-ish. But I thought a lot about this picture in coming here because his job was so different than our jobs or my jobs or the modern day work environment. Like this is in 1960, South Bend, Indiana. Every day, all he did was get in there at 5 a.m., cut meat, and sell meat to customers. All of his interactions were in person, over the counter, from 2 or 3 feet away, or maybe by phone call. You know, obviously he had a phone, so.
You think he washed his hands before and after using it?
Well, I'm sure that food safety was adhered to in every level, so. But you know, obviously, you can tell the guy's working there. He's like a manual labor profession, and I think that's what's been a reminder to me. You can never quite get away from the manual labor part of our profession. Like, even at the hospital, I'm like breaking down boxes and helping take the trash out. And there's a certain element of manual labor that is inherent with the position, I think. So, anyway, my grandfather, I never knew him well, but he was in the food world, and I liked his hat. I want to get some of his hats. It's like, I think it's like a little paper hat. It's about every day. That we don't have to wash it. Anyway, I think family history is important, and nowadays I get so distracted, and so many of us do, by emails and phone calls and texts and your real life applications. And, it's just such a bewildering world. He focused on really one thing, making his customers happy so they come back again. And that was his job every single day. You help the lady down the street and you give her a few extra, beef bones for her dog or whatever, and then she'll come back. And he had customers who came to the shop for 20 years, 25 years, right? So I think it also made me think, people are very fickle nowadays. They don't necessarily have an allegiance to one particular thing. And with the trends in the food world, people tend to kind of go up and down. Like I was at Shake Shack yesterday with my kids, and they now have this whole Korean menu, right? All Korean spiced barbecue, all this different stuff. 2 years ago, I was at a conference, and someone said, Korean menu, or Korean tastes are on the rise among young people. Like 2 years ago at the CIA in California. And then all of a sudden I walked into Shake Shack, and it's a whole Korean menu, right? So there are these trends that kind of come and go. Detroit style pizza is another one. Right? We're going to start to see it everywhere. They're opening a place called Jets here in town. It's going to be awesome, but it's still a bit of a food trend, I could say. Okay, 2 quotes. I'm going to actually challenge you guys, some of you that haven't spoken up yet, to maybe chime in here. Talk to me about what this means to you. If you love, this is what a chef in Chicago told me once. If you love even the worst elements of a job, you're probably in the right profession. And you don't need to apply this to cooking, you can apply it to anything. A subject that you study, a job that you had, something your parents do. How do you interpret that? Chef Shane, how do you interpret that?
You really have to embrace all parts of a job. It's a yin yang. Both the awesome day and the less than awesome day make up the day. And if you find too much negative, you need to get a different career. You really have to find a good balance. And it applies to every job. Teaching, being a chef, being a mechanic, being an engineer. You have to balance the pros and cons and to see if it really works for you.
And works in your life at that time.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah, things change too. Yeah.
Right, things change over the course of your life. And the way I interpret this, so I didn't mention my third part-time job. I work as a line cook at the Pearl Street Pub downtown. It's a pretty famous pub. It's been there for 22 years. And we don't close till 2 in the morning. We serve burgers and we serve our full menu till 1:30 in the morning. So when I'm getting out of there at night, I don't get out till 3 in the morning, 3:15. And at the end of the night, the last 2 things you have to do is clean the fryer, like get the hot fryer and drain all the fryer juice out, and then take that out to the back in like a big bucket.
If I can interject, it is the most lame job.
Yeah.
Giant sizzling oil put into a giant pot, run through they call them a China cap. I don't know if they still call them.
It's like,
Through
yeah.
a special filter, and it stinks, but it has to be done every day.
And it's high danger, like high risk, of course.
Yeah, oh
So
yeah.
You have to be super focused on the task at hand. Or cleaning out the sinks is my other one in kitchens. Like at any job I've ever had, and I will ever have, I think I'm gonna be cleaning out the sinks at the end of the night. I clean out the sinks at the frat. I don't clean out the sinks at the hospital. Don't probably ask me next time. But anyway, I really, when I go into a work environment, I judge it by the team of people, the vibe that I get, the pay, and any other benefits that may come across. When I walked into the pub, I met the head of security. He'd been there 22 years. I walked in, the bartender had been there 15 years. One of the servers had been there 12 years. There's something interesting about what makes people want to stay at a place, and I knew I was kind of on the right track, as opposed to a lot of turnover that you see at a lot of restaurants. You see people just like flying through. But because of the turnover, you all have an opportunity to get a job in a restaurant, especially after this class. Like you have real viable employment opportunities in this town to make money after you finish this class, I really think. Because people are looking for entry-level workers, and the amount of turnover is insane. So
Yeah,
don't
and
discount
it's
that.
great with college, if you're going to college, helping pay that tuition to reduce any possible future student debt.
Yep.
It's a great intermediate job on the way to a career.
Totally, and it makes your parents, it makes you look hardworking to your parents while you're in college. It's like, hey, I have a job, right? It's good. Wait, are you all close to college or no? Are we? Yeah.
Put your hands up if you're a junior. Put your hands up if you're a senior. Put your hands up if you are a senior assassin. Let's see it. Put your hands up. Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, what's that mean? We'll talk later. All right, one other quote, and then we're going to go on to a couple of the questions the chef had asked me to address today. This one is really important to me personally. I want to hear your interpretation, and somebody better say something, because I heard this was like Fairview High School, so give me something here. Be nice to people on the way up. You will see them again on the way down. This is a very common restaurant adage, as we said. How do you interpret that statement?
I would say like, if like you're a dishwasher and like you're gonna rise up the ranks, but like you start as a dishwasher, if you're nice to all the other dishwashers, when you get up, you'll probably have a better relationship with them than other managers might have, so you might get things done more quickly, or they might wanna help you more than they would otherwise.
Yes, if you show your team spirit from the beginning, like willing to help other people with things, I think it certainly helps you advance within any organization, any business. Anyone else have a spin on this?
You were talking about, the restaurant industry being fickle, right? And I think that's with anything in life though. If you treat people well on the way up, when things are going good, they'll be there for you when things are going bad.
Yes, thank you. That really distills it down for me, yes, thank you, that's really the essence for me. Have you ever seen someone in, oh, sorry, one more.
I just think it relates to what you're talking about like good, like working conditions and like a good restaurant environment.
Right, it fosters a good team environment, because even if the pay is not awesome and the work is hard, at least you have your person on your left and right that you can like make jokes with and hang with, right? Be convivial, totally. So I want to come back to your definition or your interpretation, only because this to me is also important, because have you ever seen anyone in a restaurant setting or a bar setting or somewhere treat one of the people behind the counter or the server or the bartender with some disrespect? You ever seen someone disrespect somebody that's in a service position? Yes. Like you remember this clearly, or like you've just seen it a lot?
There's been so many times, like in restaurants, where I'm like either with my family or just like kind of countless times where I could just overhear conversations of like how they're talking to the servers, and like even when I was a kid I was like, and I just remember feeling so bad, like because it was late or they forgot something, and I'd always just try to like smile or just like when they would come to our table next, like it's just really common sometimes, or like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you noticed it from an early age, you kind of felt this disrespectful tone, and you're like, that
Yeah.
doesn't seem right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of common, unfortunately.
Anybody else? Any specific memory of?
Oh, well, like, there's definitely a lot of, like, chefs that I've met that can be really rude, like, even if they make the problem, like, they
Mess things up.
mess things up. And then you'd be like, oh, like, hey, like, they didn't want this, they wanted that, and then they get really mad at you, but you're like, you
Right.
put it in the order right, so it's their fault.
Got it. Are you talking in your current job setting?
Only
Yeah.
one of the chefs.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So there's the trade, and like you're like, no, they didn't want broccoli, they want asparagus, and the chef's like, or like they're just upset, right?
Yeah.
But that could be they're having a bad day and they have an unhappy home life and their job sucks. Like it could be a lot of things, right? But I guess my point is back to the customer service element. I really have to call people out on this a lot because I'm gonna tell you a very personal story. So this happened at the. I was worried about working at a frat because I was worried they were going to be a bunch of entitled 19 to 21-year-old kids, and well, they are. So I wasn't wrong, but they've been generally cordial and respectful. And then the last week of class in December, there was a finals. Oh, they had finals, so everybody was stressed, right? Because they hadn't been studying all semester, and all of a sudden they're trying to study in like 48 hours to pass the exam. And this kid was pretty stressed, so I had cheeseburgers. We had cheeseburgers that day. I put out 35, which is the usual amount I put out. And some of the boys were more hungry than usual, so they grabbed 2 or 3. Like I could see they were kind of grabbing more than they should. They're only supposed to have 1. And then this kid comes to me at the end of the lunch service, and first he walked back into my kitchen, which I really, like that's a tough one for me. I really try to have like a line. I just don't like people coming back into the space because it's hot, it's dangerous, there's water on the floor, you know, like I just don't want anything bad to happen. So he walked into my space, you can probably imagine this, chef. And he said, "Chef, there's no cheeseburgers." I said, "Yeah, you know, like that's all." Like I literally had no more. Like if I had had 1 more, I would have made it. But I was like, I just were out. Like I think some of your guys took 2. And he thought for a minute, I could tell he was pissed. He goes, "Make me a grilled cheese." Ooh. And so, I don't know how you guys would handle this situation, but I was like, okay. And this is a 20-year-old kid, I'm 45, like, you know, but I was just like, I kind of was like, okay. So I did, I made the grilled cheese. I brought it to him, and I said, look, you really shouldn't talk to people like that, especially when you're trying to get something from them. You know, like I just had that kind of like level moment. It's harder to do that with a customer in your restaurant because they might be like, F you and write a bad Yelp review, but does that make sense? That kind of was a personal story that happened to me recently. It just kind of reminded me, you just have to be kind to people. And don't bite the hand that feeds you. That's like ridiculous. Why would you insult the chef or try and, you know what I mean?
It's truly, in this case,
So,
I'm
yeah.
gonna hand
So I was just, that's kind of a microcosm of my point is that's a microcosm of what many people in our industry experience on a daily basis. Servers and bartenders especially, predominantly young women, have never had a position of power before or been in a powerful position. All the time, you know, my wife was a server and bartender for many years. Comments, inappropriate touching from customers, like it's part of the game unless you work for an organization establishment that says this is not gonna be part of the game, okay? So that's just kind of a little bit of real talk about that. Yep. All right, Shane had a few questions for me. Let me see. All right, questions. Anybody have any questions right now? No? So I'm covering a lot in a short amount of time. Let's see. All right, I want Chef to pick the 2 most interesting of these questions because you had a lot of them. Let's see. And I don't want to make it out to seem like the whole industry is just rife with terribleness, like it's not, but there's some of it out there, and some business owners do a better job than others of, you know, controlling it and managing it with their employees and protecting their people. So, Chef, I thought you sent me. Okay, here it is. Why don't you pick your favorite 1 or 2 of those you think is relevant to
Well, I
what I'm
can
talking
tell you
about?
right now, what does one do to get a foot in the door in the food service industry?
Yeah, show up on time, be willing to work. Don't exaggerate your experience, like don't make it up. But just be honest. So like if you help your mother or father at home with cooking, for example, you could say that. Like if you're just looking for a first job, you could be like, I do a lot of cooking in the home. And that counts for some things. That shows at least you have some acumen. You like have some experience, you know how to cook. And just be honest with people and just tell them what you're looking for. And the customer service piece. I think that was a good reminder what you had said about, even if you're the cook in the back and you never even see the customers, you still have to have good customer service skills. 'Cause you still have to deal with all the people around you in like in a dynamic way. So customer service skills, just being a professional, polished person, like, but with an emphasis on time. You want to also be efficient. You can't just be like sitting there for like, 2 hours peeling potatoes and thinking about your life. Like you gotta like move through things very quickly. So you do have to keep a certain pace in mind.
Can you talk about any issues or any changes or the current status of diversity, both with regards to race, religion, gender,
Yeah.
in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing I can highlight on that is look up, Google search James Beard Award winners. And James Beard Awards is like one of the highest accolades that a restaurant or chef can get, a restaurateur can get. And for many years was dominated by Caucasian males in French and Italian restaurants, was kind of like the thing. And if you type in James Beard Award winners from this past year, over 50% were from ethnic minorities, non-Caucasian. Over 50% were women in the field. Like, there's like a whole new crew of people, a lot of recent immigrants who brought the cuisine of their country to the United States, Senegal, Japan, China. People like really bringing their intrinsic home culture to the US. Like, that's really cool, because that's at the highest level of recognition. And so I think there is a trickle down too.
Can you give us, I'll make it a challenge, in maybe 20 small phrases from walking in the door to going home at night? What happens in a typical restaurant? 20 or 15 quick things, starting off with walk in the door.
Yeah, so I brought a couple of props. So this is like you can pass this around, it's a clean apron. This is the kind of apron you typically get. It's a crappy apron. They'll usually give you a crappy one. It's like a $4 apron or something, almost disposable. So you're gonna wear that. It's gonna protect you from both water if you're doing dishes. It's also gonna protect you from getting your whites. Typically people wear whites. You don't wanna get food splatter on there. This is an apron I've had for 20 years. So I've just kind of carried it from every kitchen that I've been. I like this apron because a couple reasons. One, it protects me generally here. It's very lightweight, it's breathable. It's not like super suffocating. And vertical stripes. Does anyone know what vertical stripes? What does it make you look? Taller. Yeah, it makes you look taller.
Yeah.
And for some reason, people respect people that are tall. It's weird. It's a weird world, but you feel a little bit taller. You stand a little more upright. Horizontal stripes make you look wider. Another option. So, and then I wanted to talk a little about the uniform. So, this is how I'm going to work. I'm literally going to the frat right after this. So, there's something that's interesting about chef. Typically, the outfit you're gonna have, or the uniform, you're gonna have 2 rows of buttons. You can choose which way to button. I have a shirt underneath. But one of the things people don't know often is, like, a chef might be working busy in the restaurant and then they have to go talk to a customer. Part of the reason it's designed like this, let's say you had a dirty lapel and some oil and splatter, then you just switch it up, you just go the other way, and then you can walk out and you look neat in your appearance, right? So that's partly why the 2 rows of buttons. The pants are lightweight. They're, again, breathable is important because most kitchens are 80 to 100 degrees depending on the day and the weather and the season. So you're gonna be super hot, so you want breathable clothes. They're somewhat fire retardant, like they don't catch fire easily, they're not frayed. So that's important when you're choosing like a pant. Just something loose fitting that's comfortable. You don't wanna wear jeans. If you wear jeans in like a kitchen, you're just gonna like suffer, it's gonna be terrible. You wear a hat, most places let you decide what kind of hat you wanna wear. There's chef hats, there's tall chef hats, there's little chef hats, there's all kinds. Most places just say wear a hat, because the health department says you have to wear a hat, so. Shoes, another fun one. So a lot of nurses wear clogs and a lot of chefs wear clogs. And the reason why in the kitchen we often wear clogs, there's no holes in here. There's no way for hot oil or liquid, hot soup or anything to get into the shoe. So you don't really want to wear, what are the ones called with the holes? Crocs. So Crocs are cool for like leisure wear. You don't want to wear them in the kitchen because anything hot would immediately just like fry your foot. So the other nice thing about clogs, you don't need to button them, you don't need to lace them. B, they generally have like a very non-stick sole that you can even walk on slight bits of oil and water and you just grip. It's a very grippy sole. And then 2, if I were to have a total disaster and clumsy Chef Shane like pour some hot oil in my direction, you can quickly escape and like just get out of the situation if you did get hot oil down into your shoe. So.
Things like that do happen fairly frequently. Things fall to the floor that are red hot and hit your shoes and legs. And
yeah, it happens, especially the hot oil of a fry. It's one of the most dangerous parts. But then I think it's just respect. So whoever I report to, let's say it's chef, I'd go up to them as soon as I'm ready for work, which is like on time or early, right? Hey, what do you need? What can I start with?
And you're gonna get a quick first, second, third things,
Or maybe a list. There might be a
maybe,
list.
hopefully a list.
It might be like, here, I need all this in the next 3 hours, or whatever. So some time-based element. Or it might be more like, I need you to start with this, and then do this, and then come talk to me after. That's a common one too. And then just like, you just work, you're on your feet all day. You can take short breaks in the alley or in the back. There's not usually a break room or any kind of like nice fancy place to take a break. Just sit on a milk crate in the alley.
Do you really get breaks?
I'd give myself breaks. Yeah. And the old adage in that restaurant industry is everyone smoked cigarettes back when I started, because if you smoke cigarettes, that was the only way to get a break. You'd be like, oh, I gotta go smoke a cigarette. I need a 5-minute break. So then they would peace out. And if you didn't smoke cigarettes, you couldn't get a break. So it was kind of unfair. Now, not that many people smoke cigarettes anymore. People smoke other things, of course, but you have to kind of carve out opportunities to take a break, and it's not always in a dignified environment.
Is there drugs and alcohol? As we're down in the last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
What about substance abuse in
Yeah.
the industry? And is there any support for people who have substance abuse?
Yeah, thank you for that, Shane. That's something else very important to me. So, I've worked in this field for 20 plus years. I've had a lot of friends succumb to suicide, alcoholism, drug abuse, divorce, messed up relationships. I've had a lot of friends have a lot of issues. And I've actually I volunteer with an organization out of Arvada called CHOW, which is specifically for mental health to support people in our industry. Because you just have ready access to a lot of drugs and alcohol when you're in the food world. At the end of the night, a lot of times at a bar, everyone on staff will do a shot at midnight. It's kind of a tradition. Everyone goes and then does a quick shot at midnight. There's like an active drinking culture that's kind of encouraged. And not just on Friday and Saturday nights, but every night. Like there's this kind of feeling like you just want to. And it's partly out of good things like team bonding. Like let's all hang out and drink and have a good night. Like let's have fun after work. But then what it ends up being is you get home at 3 a.m. feeling terrible, and then you wake up and do it again. And I do think there's a little bit of an adrenaline piece to that. I think that when you work a busy night in a restaurant, you get adrenaline. Your body's a little bit hyped. So it's hard to go home at 11 o'clock and just sit down on your pillow and go to bed. So I think there's a little bit of a kind of lifestyle piece there. But I do think drugs and alcohol is still plaguing our industry a lot. And our industry also, I'll lastly say, attracts a lot of neurodiverse individuals, as you could say. So many chefs I've worked with over the years, and cooks, ADHD, dyslexia, numerous other challenges, OCD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, depression. Like most of the people I've worked with have had something going on, as they say. And so I think it's an interesting field. I think if you're drawn to it, I think just go get a job, as some of you have done. It'll be your test, right? If you spend 6 months working somewhere that's professional and busy, you're gonna know like this is for me or this is not for me. So I really think that.
As we're winding down time, let's end this with a little bit of an interesting levity. What's the worst thing you've ever dropped, or the worst mistake you've ever made?
Oh yeah, no question. So I worked in an Italian restaurant in Chicago called Fortunato, and I had to make all the sauces for the pasta station. I was the pasta guy, so I had to do all the pasta, all the sauces, and I had a giant batch of what's it called? It was like a tomato-based sauce with capers, Napolitan, arrabbiata. Anyway, so like a big giant jug, and it's right before service. We're about to get rolling, and I walk over to the walk-in, and I just take like one stumble as I go over the bridge of the walk-in, like the little thing, and just the whole thing, and the whole cooler just like fills with just like red, just like, and I just like stood there for a while. But again, my team, I was like, hey guys, can you come look at this? And everyone came in, everyone, grabs a mop and grabs some towels and just like figures it out in like 5 minutes. It would have taken me an hour,
Wow.
So, and I felt crappy, but everyone's done it.
Well, yeah, there are adventures to be had in the food service industry, and
Yeah, I don't want to scare you away from it. It's super fun. Like, I still love what I do. And then back to the quote that I had written up there, I still love every part of it. Well, maybe not every part. But, like, I love what I do because it involves food and people. And for me, there's no greater satisfaction than showing hospitality towards other people, making them feel comfortable in your own home or your own restaurant, and just, like, being a part of that experience for people.
great. Well, you guys, let's hear it, and thank you for Chef Stephen Maynard.
All right, and I might come back.